The war that Israel launched without a declaration against Iran early in the morning on June the 13th, 2025, came as a real shock to the vast majority of ordinary people, as everyone had already gotten used to the loud statements of both sides, limited to very precise and measured strikes. But is an Iranian scenario against Russia possible? And if so, what might it be? As has been noted earlier, there is quite a lot in common between the conflict between Iran and Israel, behind which the entire collective West, led by the United States, is already openly standing, and the scenario according to which a hypothetical border conflict between Russia and NATO member countries, probably the Baltics, Poland, Finland, Sweden and others, could begin to develop and continuously expand. NATO will actively use its superiority in aviation and air and space reconnaissance, and will respond with large-scale missile and drone strikes and conduct the main combat operations on the ground. In fact, this is exactly what is happening between Israel and Iran right now. However, there are also very significant differences from the Great War that has begun in the Middle East. The most important is that the Russian Federation is the second most powerful nuclear power in the world, possessing a nuclear triad that keeps the United States in particular and the NATO bloc as a whole from a full-fledged direct war, preferring the proxy format, acting through the armed forces of Ukraine and the Ukrainian special services. The second difference is that the war in Ukraine has been going on for the fourth year in a row. The Russian army is not in barracks, but in already deployed fortified positions. The level of readiness for possible troubles at the front is the highest possible. It is hardly possible to unpleasantly surprise them there at the front. The third difference is that the Russian Federation, unlike the Islamic Republic, has a truly reliable official ally in the DPRK, which is ready to come to the rescue again by sending ground troops. But Iranian scenario may be transferred to Russian realities. Probably the attack will be carried out simultaneously from outside and from inside, and at once in several directions, in order to force the already small forces to disperse across the vast expanses of Russia. The main actors then could be the armed forces of Ukraine and the Ukrainian special services. Secondly, the young NATO members can create an additional and extremely sensitive point of tension in the Baltics, starting, for example, with a border incident with another attempt at an armed seizure of a Russian vessel, as a result of which the air defense of some Estonia will shoot down a fighter of the Russian aerospace forces that flew to the rescue, allegedly violating its airspace. And then the most diverse scenarios of escalation are possible, with strikes by air and sea drones and the involvement of an increasing number of countries that are part of the NATO bloc in the border conflict with Russia, without invoking Article 5 of its charter.
The Ukrainian Air Force has detected and targeted a command post of the occupying Russian army near the occupied city of Oleshki in Kherson region. As a result of the strike by a MiG-29 fighter delivered with a US-made GBU-62 aerial bomb, the command post and a nearby ammunition depot, a military truck carrying ammunition to the depot, were blown up, and all Russian servicemen at the command post were killed. It should be noted that the Ukrainian army has recently increased its strikes on the positions of the occupying Russian army, both in the occupied territories and in the border regions of Russia, mainly with US and French-made aerial bombs. As a result, a large number of command posts, ammunition depots, military equipment and personnel have been destroyed.
Russian troops have stepped up their offensive in eastern Ukraine, advancing toward the Donetsk and Luhansk regions and approaching the northern Sumy region. These moves, according to Ukrainian officials and analysts, are aimed at forcing Kiev to disperse its forces and showcase its battlefield successes to the international community, the Washington Post reports. Russian troops have come within 19 kilometers of Sumy, said Igor Shapoval, chairman of the Red Cross in Sumy Oblast. The situation is difficult, but not critical. There is no panic, but anxiety, especially among children, is felt, he noted. According to Deputy Mayor of Sumy, Artem Kuznetsov, the shelling of the city continues. The shelling is continuous. If the front line gets closer by another 10 to 15 kilometers, the artillery will terrorize our city, he warned. Nearby, near the logistically important town of Yonakovka, fierce fighting continues. The situation is very tense. Friends who hold this area say that the enemy is coming wave after wave, as if deliberately trying to exhaust our defense, said a platoon commander under the pseudonym Kast. But here, Russian soldiers are destroyed. But it seems that the Russian generals are not drawing any conclusions from this and are continuing their meat attacks. Analysts are convinced that the attacks in the Sumy region and in the direction of Dnipropetrovsk region are a diversionary tactic. In my view, the Sumy direction is a subsidiary axis for the Russians. The main goal is Donbass. They will not be able to capture Sumy. Rather, they want to exert psychological pressure and sow chaos, says Konrad Muzyka, director of the Polish defense consultancy Rochan. Even if Ukrainian forces manage to hold the city, the consequences of prolonged shelling could be catastrophic. They can turn a city into ruins, destroy the economy, create hell for the civilian population. Their style is to create suffering. They do not know how and do not want to create anything else, warns one European diplomat. Ukrainian troops are gradually pushing Russian forces back in the northeastern Sumy region, President Volodymyr Zelensky said recently. Prior to this, the Ukrainian army had almost completely withdrawn from the parts of the Russian region of Kursk it had been occupying since August last year. Russia then intensified its shelling of Ukrainian border areas, with Ukrainian authorities ordering the evacuation of 11 villages as a result.